Chikiti joins us as a public affairs analyst. Thank you for coming this morning.
Chamberlain, a pleasure.
Well, yes, indeed, the civil service is the main instrument for implementing government policies, decisions, and a lot of them. They actually lead the public service in that. And that's what we're focusing on this morning. And from your perspective, would you say, to all intents and purposes, they've been doing their best? Because the last guest here did say, well, if we don't have proper political leadership, what do you expect from a civil service?
There's a statement that typifies the evolution of the civil service, from 1965 to maybe the early 70s, then from the 70s to date. And that is that from 65, the headings of the civil service and so on, the statement was that whatever you want to get done, give it to the civil service.
In terms of performance?
In terms of performance. And then, later, as the civil service evolved, the statement was, if you want to get anything done, give it to the private sector. And so that, in essence, gives you an idea of what the civil service used to be and what the civil service is today. Just like in virtually every sector of the political economy of this country, the civil service has also been in serious decline. But again, this discussion presupposes, maybe one fundamental reason I want to believe on your path. And that is that the civil service and the performance of the civil service, their competence and their ability to deliver can be done in isolation, of some of the other issues that border, on this country. And so if you want a sectoral, discussion on that, which is the essence of this particular discussion, we'll discuss that. But we want to, I believe that the performance of the civil service really is hinged on some other indicators, especially within the polity of this country. And so it is easy to blame the civil service for so many things. Of course, clearly, a lot of people are complaining about the civil service. People talk about incompetence, ineptitude on their part, and so on. And so many, things lead to that. It is not as if the governments of the day, from independence to date, have not been aware of this. Okay. And that is why so many reforms have taken place within the structure of the civil service. Some of them essentially managerial reforms, and then structural reforms of the civil service. You talk about even the Magan report, I think that was led by a white man in 1963. You also have, I think it was the Adioye reform in 1971 or 70. Then the Udoji, reform, which was called the Udoji Award in 1972. You also had the one of 1974 to 1975, which was essentially a reform of the entire civil structure of the civil service within the federal structure, the state structure, and local government structures. Up till 1988, the Babangida, incursion into reforming the civil service, and even beyond that. And so they have tinkered with so many things, and especially they have looked at the issue of, in order to motivate the civil service, the issue of grading, the issue of salaries, and so on, where at the time in 1974-75, the grading system was replaced by the grading of skills to skill 17 and so on. And then the issue of, I think the Public Complaint Bureau was also introduced in 1974 so that people could have access, to that particular institution for complaints about maybe performances of civil servants themselves. And then also the Anti-Corruption Bureau, even within the structure of the civil service itself, and there's so many other things. So attempts have been made. Orosanye came in some time ago, and they also came with his own brand of reforms when he started a 4-year tenure of the civil service, subject to renewal after the first tenure, maybe for a maximum of 8 years. And the essence of that was that I think the thinking or the belief then was that so many people, get to the top, and then they remain there for years, not giving others the opportunity to also climb, and so on. That also happened. Do not also forget what Babangida tried to do with the civil service when he made it, the ministers as, chief accountants of the civil service institution. And also the director position of permanent secretary was set aside for that of the director general, who was also a political appointment. So that also, really brought a lot of changes, most of them negative, to the structure of the civil service, because you see the civil service has also been characterized by you know, the need for neutrality, the need, you know, neutrality, and of course, transparency is also, you know, a part of that. But it was also essential for the continuity of every government, because government is said to be a continuum, that the civil servant is seen to be neutral, because he has to serve, you know, different governments, you know, at all times, so that there could be continuity in governance.
Lots of questions have been asked of civil service, and by extension, all these reforms, including the most recent one which you highlighted now, by politicians, political leadership. I mean, you have several public officers saying one or two uncomplimentary things time and again about the civil service. And then you ask yourself, well, so does that mean then that after all those reforms, the programs, which was aimed at bringing them up to speed, it's not amounting to anything?
Yeah, there's somebody that, you know, really should give a direction. Yes, they have tried to do the right thing by recognizing the need for the reform of the civil service because of the public perception about that particular institution. But also, the man who is driving the process, you know, how much is he in line with the dictates of, for instance, the democratic project in the country, for instance? Because democracy is also about accountability to the people. It is about the rule of law. It is about transparency and accountability to the people, and so on. So you see, you know, like somebody says, when the head of the fish is corrupt, it's rotten. I think it was the former Vice President Tuka Baka. It flows down to virtually every part of the body. And so, for instance, we talk about systemic corruption that, you know, is endemic in this country, that is being perpetrated every day by the politicians. Now, would the politicians be able to perpetrate this level of corruption without the collusion of the civil service, of civil servants? It is not possible, because if somebody has to do a check, it's probably not going to be maybe a political appointee and so on. It has to go through a process, and that process has to be manipulated.
Has there been is there any politician that is being perhaps indicted along with those members of the civil service concerning the pension funds?
Yeah, well, we had the issues of is a permanent secretary within the structure of the pension funds that have also been arrested by the authorities and so on. And of course, we also know that it trickles all the way down and so on. But I think that somehow the politicians in that process have been, you know, sort of isolated from even the scandal of the pension fund, essentially, but more or less
in other words, civil servants can go alone.
Servants, yes. No. Yes, to some extent, the civil servants can go alone, and they do go alone because they understand the process. They have been there. It started the process, whether at the level of bureaucracy and so on. But